Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Jonmichael, and over the past few quarters, I've had the privilege of conducting some research on how we can promote low-impact commuting in Seattle. So to begin, I'd like to bring up some key challenges we're facing across America and in Seattle today. The first is climate change. We know that in Washington state, the transportation sector accounts for 45% of all carbon emissions being released. This is the biggest sector by far, and one of the ways we can mitigate climate change is by driving less. But we tend to drive a lot. In fact, Seattle was ranked number 14 for worst traffic in the country in 2019. And who likes traffic? Moreover, we've seen an increase in obesity rates throughout the US. According to CDC data, we've jumped from 30.5% obesity prevalence in the year 2000 to 42.4% obesity prevalence as of 2018. And finally, car owners in the US spend somewhere around 17% of their annual income owning and maintaining their car. So I have a question. What if we walked or biked instead? In other words, can low impact commuting improve environmental, physical, and financial health? To answer these questions, I had the honor of working with 2100 Project last quarter, where I interviewed Seattle commuters, businesses, and organizations focused on changing the way we get around. As part of my internship, I created a video series about how the University of Washington is reducing its carbon footprint, specifically by incentivizing low-impact commuting. Check out the video series linked in this QR code if you'd like. Additionally, I created a survey for a program on the environment students to understand how they get to campus and why. So here's what I found with the survey. In the survey, 60% of the respondents primarily walked to campus, 20% primarily used public transit, 10% primarily used a personal electric vehicle or PEV, and 10% primarily drove alone. The UW Transportation Services actually conducts campus-wide surveys every year to better understand how commuters get to and from campus. And this data is aligned with their results also. An exciting part of this data is that it shows students opt not to drive to campus. The respondent who reported driving to campus actually said that they would be changing to a personal electric vehicle in the near future. While I was conducting this survey, I also conducted interviews with Seattle commuters who use personal electric vehicles to get around. So what's a personal electric vehicle? It's basically like an electric skateboard, an electric unicycle, a one-wheel, or an electric scooter. I also had the honor of talking to different organizations and businesses in Seattle who are focused on public transportation, cycling, personal electric vehicle use, and the walkability of Seattle. I wanted to hear their stories to better understand the challenges they face when trying to get around without a car. Here's what I learned. First and foremost, we need to improve the safety standards for low-impact commuters. Multiple PEV riders told me they had been hit by cars. Some of them had been hit more than one time. Cyclists told me about not feeling safe in bike lanes, especially with their kids along for the ride. I noticed a common theme in the demographics of the people I was conducting interviews with. Most were middle-aged white men. One of the cyclists I interviewed told me that it was no surprise we see this trend, as most people don't feel safe moving throughout the city on a bike. Why don't we see more children or elderly folks cycling? Second, low-impact commuters told me we needed to focus on equity and accessibility for everyone. An example an advocate for safer commutes in Seattle gave me was curb cuts. These are like the dips that connect the sidewalk and the road for ease of access to people in wheelchairs, folks who have a harder time stepping off of curbs, and people with strollers. While this design is intended for such uses, the benefits of creating this accessibility often stretch beyond the intended audience. In this case, curb cuts made it easier for everyone, from cyclists to PEV enthusiasts to toddlers learning to walk. In other words, helping those with the greatest need benefits all of us. Once we begin to see people of all shapes, sizes, genders, and ages out cycling, walking, and riding PEVs, then we'll know that we've created a safe, accessible environment. That's sort of the ultimate test. Finally, low-impact commuters couldn't help but tell me about the community they developed when they decided to leave their car behind and bike or walk instead. Commuters told stories of meeting people on buses, stopping to chat with neighbors on their bike ride to work, floating around the city on one wheels together. They told me that when we slow down, we see what's around us. We aren't as angry at other people, cooped up in little boxes honking at each other. These people felt a deeper sense of community and attachment to Seattle. And who doesn't want that? So here's a few things we can do to get people walking, biking, and PEV riding more. The number one thing we can do is slow down cars with obstacles like roundabouts, speed bumps, and by narrowing the streets. This will make people feel safer as they brave the streets. Number two, we need to separate low impact commuters from moving vehicles. Some of the ways we can do this is by installing protected bike lanes, by redesigning our roads so that there are no cars on them, car-free roads, and finally, more trails like the Burt Gilman. When you walk or ride along the Burt Gilman, you see folks, old folks, you see young kids, you see middle-aged people. Everyone from everywhere is out there. And this means that people feel safe. This is how we change the way we get around, which in turn can clean up the air, strengthen our bodies, and ultimately save us a lot of money. Thank you so much for your time.